Revealed, the sinister truth behind 3i Atlas, a haunted anomaly weighing over 33 billion tons. Karen clutched the worn envelope, as if it held the secrets to her very survival. Get out while you can, it warned, the ink smudged in places from fear-fueled desperation. She had heard the rumors, echoing through the cracked walls of Westfield, whispers of disappearances and dark forces hiding in the shadows. As she glanced toward the playground, her heart raced. The children were playing, yet an unseen weight seemed to grip the very air around her. It started with the scratching. At first, she thought it was just the old pipes, a residue of the home that had once been filled with laughter and dreams, a place where her husband had made promises under the stars. But when the noises persisted, clawing through her nights, the scratching transformed into something primal. It gnawed at her, turning the corners of her sanity into jagged shards. Then there were the shadows. Quick glimpses caught from the corners of her eyes, fleeting but definitive. They darted just out of sight whenever she turned her head. Her children Emily and Jake would stop suddenly, staring wide-eyed at something only they seemed to see, tiny hands gripping each other tightly as giggles slipped into terrified silence. The moment she came across the symbols in the soft earth, unease morphed into raw fear. They were shapes she swore she had seen in the library's dusty history books, tokens of the 3i Atlas anomaly that locals hushed in awe and terror. Just a myth, she had convinced herself, but the pounding in her skull screamed otherwise, as more residents began to vanish without a trace. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Karen's exhaustion was overshadowed by a need to protect her little ones, her heart pounding mercilessly in her chest each time they played outside. A rumble of dread settled in her stomach that told her this was no longer paranoia. It was a survival instinct. Local murmurs of unmarked vans and lights that danced in hypnotic patterns beyond the trees only deepened her fears. It all came to a head that night when Emily and Jake's laughter drifted through the darkness outside, gleeful and chilling against the stillness. Following the sound, she stumbled through the backyard and into the unnerving glow of the moon illuminating the playground. The merry-go-round creaked softly, and the swing set moved slightly, though there was no wind to guide them. The laughter stopped. Sudden silence pressed against her like a weight. Nothing stirred. Her eyes widened, the symbols in the dirt suddenly vivid as recognition shuddered through her. They beckoned with an old, unsettling lure, binding her to the fears of her neighbors. Then she heard a rustle in the bushes, cold dread seizing her limbs. A figure stepped forward, features obscured, but their voice, sweetly sinister, sent ice through her veins. "Karen," they called softly. Fear seized her as she realized the danger was not just lurking among the leaves, but rising from the past. What dark secrets lay ahead, tangled in the lives of those she thought she knew? Karen's breath hitched as the figure took another step closer, shadows warping its outline into something grotesque. The voice that echoed in the night turned her blood to ice, bringing memories of tales told in whispers. "Don't be afraid, Karen," it cooed, but the sweetness was laced with venom. Who are you?" She dared to take a step back. Her instincts screamed for her to run, yet she felt rooted to the spot. "Someone who knows what you've found. Those symbols, they hold power, ancient and unforgiving. Just like this place." The figure tilted its head, the moonlight catching glimmers of something sharp, a glinting edge that suggested danger more than comfort. Emily and Jake stirred in the distance, a soft whimper breaking the silence. Panic surged through her. "Stay back!" she shouted, her voice trembling. Her children! They were her priority, but the figure only chuckled, low and menacing. "They're not safe here, Karen. Not from what lingers, watching, waiting." Black shapes flickered behind the figure, darting in and out of sight like phantoms, feeding off the dread in the air. Karen's heart raced, hammering against the walls of her chest. She had to protect them, but how? Someone must have heard her cries because a flicker of light appeared from the house. She turned, hope igniting within her a little spark amid the darkness. But as the door swung open, the figure laughed again, a chilling sound that reverberated through the night. What's done is done, fighting is pointless. Mom! Emily's voice broke through, frail yet filled with fear. She stood gripping Jake's hand, their wide eyes fixed on Karen, filled with innocence and unreciprocated trust. Get inside! She yelled, trying to muster every ounce of authority her shaking voice could muster. But the figure didn't budge, blocking the path back to safety. Each of their muscular breaths formed clouds of dread that twisted through the air. Believe me, this is merely a game, it said. And you will all play your part. The tone cut through Karen like a knife, leaving behind raw panic. Don't you dare touch my kids! The words felt like an impotent shield against the horror unfolding before her. Suddenly, the children whimpered, recoiling at the very presence of the shadowy figure. A sensation of despair washed over Karen, sinking deep into her core. Each look from her children seized her heart, painting a picture of helplessness and fear. And then, just like that, a gust of wind erupted, shaking the branches above them, followed by the crack of thunder that echoed through the heavy night air. The figure laughed again, a dry, hollow sound that chilled her to the bone. Oh, the storm is just beginning. You'll wish you had listened to the warning. With that, it stepped back, melding into the shadows, leaving behind a palpable tension that lingered in the air. Karen's body shook as she turned to her children, her determination cracked but not broken. We need to go inside. Now! They bolted toward the house, but as she reached for the door, it wouldn't budge. Panic surged, knocking any logic from her mind. She shoved harder, desperation clawing at her throat. The shadows outside flickered, noises crescendoed into an overwhelming cacophony, like a dark anthem signaling something sinister was coming. They were trapped, and whatever had been unleashed outside was coming for them. Just as she turned back to scoop her children into her arms, freezing fear gripped her heart again. The figure stood just a few feet away, hands raised. You can't escape the game, Karen. You're already a pawn. A blinding light erupted from the symbols in the dirt, illuminating the night around them. As the chaos swirled and the world around them faded, she heard the figure whisper again, the true terror has yet to show itself. What were they awakening in the depths of Westfield? The gravity of the moment clutched at her throat, driving home a question that echoed in her mind. What was left to lose? The air crackled around them, thick with a tension that made it hard to breathe. The light from the symbols danced wildly, illuminating the ground in a way that felt unnatural. Shadows twisted around Karen and her children, stretching and curling like fingers aiming to grasp them. She could feel their warmth beside her, their presence anchoring her amidst the terror. What do we do, Mom? Emily's voice trembled, the innocence of a child stripped away by fear. Jake clutched her leg, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. Stay close, Karen hissed, her voice sharp yet shaky. She glanced back at the figure, but its face was obscured in the darkness, only its chilling laughter echoing through the chaos. Mom! Jake whimpered, pointing a shaking finger past her. Look behind them. The world twisted. The door to their home was gone, replaced by a wall of swirling darkness. The light was faltering, stuttering like a dying flame. Each pulse sent a shiver down her spine, weaving a deep-seated dread into her bones. The figure's voice slithered through the air. You've awakened something beyond understanding. The storm is merely a veil, hiding what lies beneath. Karen fought against the panic rising in her throat. What do you mean? What have we done? Desperation bubbled within her, demanding answers. It isn't just a game, Karen. It never was. The figure took a step closer, and the shadows with it. You're tangled in a web of fate, woven into these cursed symbols. It binds you, binds your children, and worse, it binds them. Suddenly, the ground trembled. It was a low, gnawing rumble that seemed to pulse from the depths of the earth. A scream sharp and distant cut through the air, sending ripples of fear racing down Karen's spine. We have to get out of here, she shouted. Instinct taking over, she yanked Emily and Jake closer, holding them tightly. We can't let it take us. But even as she said it, a part of her felt the weight of the figure's words. A revealed truth lingered heavy in the air, pressing against her mind, daring her to understand whatever horror was unfolding. With every heartbeat, the shadows thickened, coiling around them like a sentient mist. The symbols began to glow brighter, bathing the area in a harsh luminescence that cast grotesque shapes upon the trees and ground. The ground cracked wide, a black maw yawning open in front of them. Karen stumbled back, heart racing, as the smell of decay rose from the crevice, a wretched stench that made her gag. Out of the darkness, she felt a rush of cold air that whispered her name. "Mom!" Emily cried, panic puncturing her voice. She pulled at Karen's arm, urging her to move. Without thought, Karen grabbed Emily with one arm and reached for Jake with the other, unyielding in her resolve to escape. The shadows surged forward, eager to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. "Run!" she screamed, her throat raw as the abyss loomed ever closer, threatening to swallow them whole. They sprinted forward, but the weight of dread anchored them down. The house that had once felt like refuge was now merely a memory, dissipating like smoke in the wind. Just as they neared the tree line, a shriek erupted from beneath, a feral sound that resonated through the earth and into her bones. The figure's laughter rang out behind them, louder, more unhinged. "You think you can flee? Oh, you will all play your part. It's only beginning." The chaos thrummed like a heartbeat now, terrifying and relentless. Each step they took felt like a countdown to something worse, to the awakening of whatever had been buried in Westfield, awakening for them. And then, from the darkened horizon, a shadow detached itself, rushing toward them. No longer a mere outline, but a living form, growling low and menacing. With one final glance, Karen knew there was no turning back. They could run. But for how long? And at what cost? As the sound of rushing footsteps overcame them, she felt the answer thudding in her chest. The game had only just begun. Karen pushed herself faster, adrenaline surging through her veins. The trees raced past, dark wisps of shadow and twisted bark. Behind them, the growling throb of what chased them felt alive, an entity with its own will. She could sense it getting closer, its breath hot against her back, seeping into her mind like a poison. "Mom, please!" Jake's voice broke through her growing hysteria. She felt her heart lurch, the sound of his panic igniting a new wave of urgency. She couldn't look back, she couldn't afford to face whatever horror pursued them. But the weight of his voice gnawed at her instincts. "Hold on, baby! Just a little longer!" she cried, gripping their hands tightly, urging them onward. As panic pushed her feet forward, the world around them began to change. The sounds of the forest faded, almost like the darkness sucked the sound from the air. They burst through the treeline, skidding to a stop at the edge of a clearing bathed in the sickly glow of eerie light. In the center, a massive stone altar loomed, covered in symbols that pulsed in time with the beat of terror in her chest. Karen's breath hitched as a chill swept through her. Emily tugged at her sleeve, her eyes darting from the altar to the shadows. "Why are we here?" she whimpered, the innocence of the question piercing through the thick fog of dread. "This is where it all starts," Karen muttered, dread coiling tighter in her stomach. The figure's warning echoed in her mind, words she tried to forget, now rippling in the fabric of reality around her. The storm had unleashed something primal. Suddenly, the wind howled, freezing them in place. Dark shapes slithered from the tree's edge, whispering indistinguishable syllables that twisted through the air. Karen felt the shadows, once chaotic, coalesce into distinct forms almost human yet twisted. "What is that?" Jake whimpered, peering over at the grotesque figures. The ground shuddered beneath them again, a reminder of the world unraveling around them. She couldn't let fear take root. "I don't know, but we can't let them catch us," Karen shouted, her voice a strained thread of defiance. The figures moved forward, faces obscured, but their eyes glinted with an unnatural hunger, a predatory glimmer that sparked her fight-or-flight instinct. Emily's trembling fingers tightened around her mother's hand. "I'm scared, me too, Em." "Me too," Karen admitted, her heart pounding like a drum. But deep down, another voice whispered, nagging at her, what if this was part of it? A game? "Look!" Jake suddenly pointed. In the center of the altar, a glowing blade had appeared, shimmering ominously, its edge glinting as if it absorbed the fear in the air. We need that. No! Karen snapped, a sudden fierce protectiveness surging through her. It's a trap. But the shadows surged closer, their whispers rising into a deafening roar, demanding her attention, their voices weaving into a haunting melody that clawed at her mind. She felt the presence of their terrifying kinship with the dark entity, drawing them into its web with a resonance that mirrored her own heart's fear. "Mom!" Emily cried, tugging again, desperation flaring in her voice. They had a choice: stay and face the shadows or chase the truth behind that blade. The choice hung like a suspended breath. They could seek power or succumb to despair. "Okay!" Karen shouted over the cacophony, decision made. "We go for it!" The moment she bolted toward the altar, the figures lunged forward, arms outstretched to claim them. The clearing exploded into chaos, shadows clawed at them, tendrils curling dangerously close, drawing nearer, blotting out the possibilities of escape. "Run! Just run!" Karen screamed, pushing everything she had into motion. But the shadows shrieked, a sound that sank into the core of her being, chilling her very soul. Fear threatened to paralyze her as she sprinted, heart racing, the altar looming closer, with the weight of countless eyes watching, waiting for their next move. Something dark flickered behind them, a vast shadow opening the maw of the forest, a reminder of their fragility amid an unforgiving night. What would they find at the altar? Was it the key to their salvation or the beginning of an even deeper nightmare? And in the back of her mind, the feeling grew heavier, a whisper that echoed louder than even the shadow's call. What if the storm was just the beginning? The shadows closed in, an ocean of darkness crashing against the fragile light surrounding the altar. Karen felt her pulse thunder in her ears, drowning out everything else. The figures lunged, their grotesque limbs reaching for her children, sending splinters of terror coursing through her body. "Close your eyes!" she yelled, adrenaline fueling her every word. She had to protect them. With every ounce of courage, she pulled Jake and Emily behind her, shielding them with her body. Their warmth felt like a fragile flame against the encroaching chill. Just steps from the altar, she felt a shimmering heat rolling off the blade, almost seductive. It pulsed, drawing her attention like a moth to a flame. A voice whispered deep inside her, wrapping around her thoughts. Power, safety, grip it, and everything would change. "Mom!" Jake's voice staggered as he tugged her sleeve, pulling her back to reality. "We can't let them get us. We have to go." "No, Jake. If we can just reach the altar." The panic cloaked her heart, the desire for that blade gnawing at her resolve. The shadows surged, their twisted forms spilling into the clearing, blocking any avenue of escape. Their whispers rose, a cacophony that wrapped around them, squeezing the air from her lungs. "Join us," they beckoned, a siren-esque call. "Offer yourselves." The thought sent a surge of fury through her. She wouldn't. Not her kids. With a guttural cry, she charged forward with renewed determination, dragging both children with her. There was no choice now, it was life or death. As they neared the altar, she could see the blade clearer. It thrummed with energy, beckoning and repulsing all at once. It seemed to pulse in time with their frantic heartbeats. Each step felt monumental, the air thickening with an insidious urgency. Would they reach it in time? "Just keep running!" she shouted as they leaped onto the altar's cold, uneven surface. Shadows screeched, the sound razor-edged, scrambling back momentarily as if the light pushed them back. "Now, the blade," she emphasized, pointing toward the weapon, but as she reached for it, her hand froze inches away. It felt like ice, whispering secrets only the damned should know. She hesitated, fear gripping her heart. What if it's a trick? Emily whimpered, eyes wide with terror. Before Karen could respond, the shadows recoiled, slinking back, creating murky shapes that writhed and churned in waves. She could feel their hunger, their desire to feed on her fear, to devour her whole. "We need to take it," Karen spat out, clenching her jaw. She could sense the lengths she would go to for survival. But as she grasped the pommel, a flash of light surged through her fingertips. It coursed like fire along her veins, a radiant fury igniting her soul. An image flooded into her mind, a glimpse of the horrors that awaited should they fail. Cities lay ravaged, shadows devouring piece by piece, the world choked in darkness. "Mom, what are you doing?" Jake pleaded, but she couldn't stop now. The blade was more than just a weapon, it felt like a part of her, a dark symbiosis entwining her life with this nightmare. "Hold on!" she shouted, yanking the blade free with an explosive pull. As it slid from the altar, the shadows howled, a chilling harmony of despair and rage. The air thickened, swirling around them, drawing closer. The clearing darkened, the trees bending under the storm of fury brewing. With the blade gripped tightly, they turned to confront the shadows that lunged forward, filling the air with shrieks of fury. Joy mingled with dread as the dance of shadows converged on them, creating a vortex of chaos. As she prepared to fight, panic wrestled within, the blade humming in her hand, a question pressing in her mind. Was this weapon their salvation or a curse that bound them to the darkness? In that moment, amid the swirling shadows and echoes of dread, the truth took shape, lurking just out of reach. Its claws were closing in, and the twisted path ahead remained shrouded in mystery. What would they awaken with the blade in hand? The truth whispered just beyond her grasp, but something told her the worst was yet to come. Searing pain shot through Karen's hand as the shadows lunged closer, an insatiable tide of darkness. The blade felt alive, thrumming with the raw energy of despair around it. She tightened her grip, her knuckles widening, ready to meet whatever came next. "Mom!" Jake screamed, his voice nearly lost in the chaos. In that frantic moment, Karen felt something shift. The blade pulsed between her fingers, as though responding to her fear. Shadows writhed and twisted, almost alive, testing her resolve. She could hear the whispers again, clearer now, weaving through her thoughts like a serpent. "Use it, be one with us." "No!" she shouted, defiance burning brighter than any doubt. She glanced back at Jake and Emily. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with dread. She couldn't lose them, not now. The shadows swirled around them, forming shapes that clawed at her mind. Memories from their past flooded, a cascade of laughter from true family moments, blissful innocence. The contrast of what they once had and what threatened to take it all away ignited a fierce determination within her. "Stay close," she growled, positioning the blade before her like a shield. The shadows screeched again, the noise ripping through the air, echoing with a destructive rage. She could feel their hunger, smell their decay as they circled in, a mocking cloud of despair. It sent tremors through her. The blade warmed under her grip, wrapping around her thoughts, whispering promises of power, of protection. With one deep breath, she lunged forward, slashing at the nearest shadow. It screamed, a bone-chilling sound that reverberated in her chest. A burst of light erupted from the blade upon contact, sending shockwaves that sent the shadow sprawling away, howling in a blend of rage and anguish. Emily gasped, pulling at Jake. "Mom, it worked!" "But keep moving!" Karen bellowed, adrenaline surging through her. Another shadow lunged, and she swung wildly. Light erupted again, illuminating the clearing in flashes, revealing a grotesque dance of writhing figures. Dread settled like a weight in her stomach. They wouldn't give up easily. The shadows' shrieks were now intermingled with murmurs. "You are ours, you can't escape, join us." The sounds twisted her insides, clawing at her sanity. Every promise that the darkness offered felt salivating and real. Could she really defeat them? She couldn't allow despair to win. But what was she becoming? The echoes of pain surrounding her grew louder, threatening to swallow any remnants of hope she clung to. "I won't let you take them!" she screamed, channeling her love for her children to fuel the blade's power. Bright tendrils of light erupted, carving paths through the swirling mass. Each pulse felt like a heartbeat, resonating with newfound strength. The shadows recoiled, snarling and hissing in an angry symphony unlike any she had heard. Jake clutched Emily's hand tightly, fear manifesting in their faces as the dark tide unsettled. Then, a shadowed figure emerged, larger than the rest, wrapped in the churning mass of darkness. It stood taller than any tree, hollow eyes glimmering with malice. "Foolish woman," it hissed, voice like gravel scraping rock. "You think wielding the blade will save you? You've only begun to understand its hunger." The knife in her hands pulsated with ferocity, as though aware of the looming terror. Karen could feel it, the connection strengthening, binding her to the darkness she fought against. In that moment of clarity amidst chaos, she realized the weight of her choices. Would wielding this weapon bind her further to the abyss? Or could it actually protect her? As the shadow lunged, she realized it wasn't just a fight for survival. It was for her soul, their souls. With another swing, she plunged deeper into darkness. What would happen if she fell into its dark embrace? Would she become a conduit for the shadows they fought back? The night swirled thick, the chilling air crackling with energy. As the first strike rang true, Karen felt the balance tipping. In this whirlwind of chaos, salvation and servitude teetered on the edge, and the truth loomed just out of sight. Could this blade truly save them, or would it ensure their doom? The darkness wavered, pulsated, and then surged forth again like a hungry beast. Karen steadied herself against the overwhelming tide, the blade in her grasp glowing with an intensity that matched her fraying courage. The cold air prickled against her skin as shadows darted closer, each tendril weaving around her like an insidious serpent. "Mom, we need to go!" Jake's voice trembled, an undercurrent of fear that snapped her focus back to her children. Emily's wide, horrified gaze caught hers, longing for safety amid the chaos. That look, pure terror, crushed her chest. "I won't let them take you!" she shouted, her voice straining against the crescendo of shrieks. As she swung the blade, light spilled forth in brilliant arcs, pushing back the darkness momentarily. But the shadows regrouped, their form reforming, more monstrous and twisted. The larger figure loomed closer, eyes like bottomless pits that threatened to swallow her whole. "Pitiful mother," it snarled, a chasm of malice echoing from its core. "You fight a battle already lost. This blade feeds on all your fears." Karen felt the weight of its words. Fear was a fire that devoured hope, and she could almost see the shadows licking at the edges of that flame. She needed to find a way to turn it into something else, something stronger. "Stay back!" she screamed, desperation lacing her tone as she hurled the blade downwards, slashing through another shadow that reared closest. A brilliant explosion sent the remaining wretches staggering, their tortured cries scratching at her soul. The blade felt right in her hands, a violent energy that coursed through her, but at what cost? "Why does it hunger?" Karen questioned aloud, her mind racing to comprehend. "Because you feed it," the abyssal creature replied, its voice weaving through her thoughts, smooth as silk and full of venom. "Fear and despair dance in your heart. Let it in, let us in." A splinter of anxiety drove deep into her. What if the blade craved more than just obedience? What if accepting its power meant losing herself completely? With each pulse, she recognized a flicker of darkness trying to nestle itself in her soul, gnawing at her will. "Fight it!" she implored herself, eyes flickering back to her children, who were now backing away, shadows of doubt painted on their faces. Their safety was a fire fueling her resolve, and she raised the blade high, a beacon amidst the overwhelming night. The ground quaked under the weight of the opposing forces, solid rock fractured, sending up clouds of dust and grit. Each thundering beat of her heart somehow felt like it echoed with the hate of the shadowed figures around her. "Keep moving!" she barked, her voice almost drowned out by the cacophony of their wails and clawing whispers. She hoped her children would heed her command, though they hesitated. And just as the oppressive darkness threatened to close in, an ancient warmth flooded through her, heartening her resolve. "Remember the love," she murmured, tapping into the precious memories of laughter around the dinner table, beach trips, and sleepy bedtime stories. With a newfound fury, Karen pivoted on her heel and launched herself into the surge of darkness, channeling that warmth. The blade blazed with light, illuminating her path forward, cutting swathes through the throng of shadows. But the deep-throated laughter of the large figure echoed around her. "You can't escape. You are one with us now," it hissed, linking the very essence of her power to the shape of the dark mass. As the light from the blade flickered, Karen had to wonder, was she truly fighting for them, or had she already begun the descent into madness? Jake and Emily skidded back, narrowly avoiding a tendril that lashed out, and it struck Karen with brutal force, wrenching the blade from her grasp. "No!" she howled, the world tilting dangerously as darkness wrapped around her. The shadows surged again, snatching her children from her line of sight. Their frightened faces faded, swallowed by the dark storm. "Mom! Help!" Jake's scream cut through her, a sharp knife that pierced her heart. She felt the blade's absence like a limb lost. Now, with the very thing meant to protect them gone, she stood fully exposed. Shadows swarmed in a chaotic frenzy, whispering their promises of despair and claiming her once again. In the profound silence that followed, Karen realized that she was no longer wielding the blade. She had become the blade, a weapon meant to be wielded by someone more lethal than even the darkest of shadows. What awaited her in that abyss? Would she ever find her children again, or had they already become prisoners of the darkness? The air thickened with bindings of terror, each heartbeat a countdown to the inevitable. She was buried in doubt now, grappling between hope and despair, and the real battle was just beginning. The darkness swallowed her whole. It tightened its grip, wrapping around her with the weight of despair, mixing confusion and fear. Stark emptiness enveloped Karen as if she had been plunged into an unending void. What had once been vibrant, her children, her hope, her very essence, felt distant, slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. "Jake! Emily!" Her voice echoed, a whisper lost in the vast, consuming silence, swallowed by shadows that danced and twisted, mocking the sound. Each fleeting moment gnawed at her heart like a vulture circling its prey. Did they hear her? Were they safe, or had they vanished into that Stygian night? The air crackled with a tension that thickened her skin. She fought to breathe, her chest constricting as if the darkness itself was trying to suffocate her. She squinted into the stillness, but the oppressive blackness offered no respite, only malevolence. "Remember the love," a voice murmured through the fog, distant yet familiar. A fleeting memory surfaced, Emily's giggle, Jake's excited chatter on their last family outing. Warmth fought against the cold dread wrapping around her. But a snicker echoed the laugh of that monstrous entity, resonated like thunder, shaking her core. "Why do you cling to them?" it sneered. "In your heart you know the truth, you don't deserve their love." "Shut up!" she screamed back, feeling a surge of defiance coursing through her. The memories of her children fueled her rising anger. She had to hold on. She could not let fear decide her fate. With that determination, the world around her began to shimmer, but it wasn't only the love she was fighting for. Pieces of her past flickered to life, days of sunshine, the smell of baking cookies, Fred, their goofy golden retriever, sprinting in the backyard. Each thought became a blade, slicing through the veil of darkness, sending shards of light cascading outward. Yet the shadows retaliated. They convulsed and writhed, howling as if the very fabric of their existence was being threatened. Blistering tendrils broke off and lashed at her, long claws raking across her arms, leaving stinging pain in their wake, coiling around her legs, attempting to pull her down into the void. "Join us," they whispered in cruel harmony. "Just give in. Feel how sweet giving up can be." But something burned in her chest, a pulsing ember of resolve, radiating defiance. "I want tea. They need me." With renewed strength, she pushed against the shadows, forcing them to recoil from her burgeoning light. The air ignited, a flicker of brilliance igniting where the darkness dared to lag. Clenching her fists tight, she focused on doing the unthinkable, fighting not just the shadows, but her own trembling self-doubt. Suddenly, a piercing shriek rang out above the shadows, sharp and throbbing, dragging her focus. It was a cry she recognized, a call from her children. "Mom! Help us! Please!" Panic surged, raw and violent, snatching her breath, but so did her determination. "Hold on! I'm coming!" In that moment, she glimpsed the path among the swirling gloom, a flickering thread connected to the echoes of her children's voices. It flickered, dim but undeniable. She dove, propelled by desperation. But as she surged forward, An immense weight crashed into her back, once again grounding her within that suffocating embrace. The shadows roared, crescendoing, their claws sinking deeper, dragging her towards the very heart of darkness, the origin of their power. "You think you can reach them?" the malevolent entity growled, chilling her soul. Karen fought against them, the cold engulfing her mind, her heart pounding with fear she'd never known. Was it too late? The shadows pressed harder, a force beyond her comprehension, but amid the unending despair, a fierce whisper broke through a truth buried deep. They were counting on her. What choice remained? As the darkness threatened to claim her, she felt that pivotal moment approaching, and then silence fell. Had she arrived at the threshold? Would she uncover what lay at the center of this nightmare? Or had she merely trapped herself deeper in despair? The way forward stretched out yet twisted, a labyrinth of terror. What waited there? Was there light, or was it simply a deeper darkness? That chilling certainty lingered, and she was terrified to find out. Karen felt the silence engulf her, a thick blanket pressing down, stifling the cries that still echoed in her ears. Each heartbeat thundered in her chest, a loud reminder that she was still alive, but doubt gripped her fiercely. What awaited her in this void? The fear curled around her like a vice, intent on squeezing the life out of her resolve. Suddenly, the weight of the darkness lessened, as if a momentary distraction had shaken its tight grip. She gasped, her lungs tasting the stale air while she scanned her surroundings, instinctively searching for the flickering thread that had once led her. Just beyond her reach, wisps of light danced like fireflies, teasing and taunting her to follow. But was it truly salvation, or another lure back into despair? A distant voice reached her, hollow yet haunting, intertwining with the echoes of her children's cries. "You can't escape, Karen. You belong to the dark, forever." The sinister tone washed over her, sending shivers racing down her spine. Anxiety mixed with a creeping sense of defeat. "No!" she shouted, her voice breaking with desperation. "I am not yours!" Yet the shadows coiled tighter, snaking around her limbs, pulling her deeper into the abyss where light dared not tread. There was a terrible weight in the air, a thick pressure that escalated her sense of dread. Around her, the darkness rippled as if alive, each pulse thrumming with malicious intent. "Give in," it whispered, seductively slinking into her thoughts, prying into the crevices of her mind. "Just give in, Karen. It would be so much easier. Relinquish your pain, your fear, lose yourself in the void." She felt her resolve waver, a flicker of hesitation cutting through the unwavering storm of despair. The memories of her children burned brightly in her heart, yet the mention of her pain resonated like an open wound. Could she really withstand this onslaught? Tears pricked her eyes as she fought against the tide of bitterness threatening to drown her. "I want to abandon them," she cried out, summoning every ounce of strength, want, and fiery love she could grasp. With a forceful thrust, she tore free of the shadowy chains binding her. The world around her pulsed, flashes of light illuminating a path just ahead. It glistened with hope, but the darkness roared in fury, howling like a tempest unleashed. With every step she took toward the glimmers, something clawed at her heels, pulling her back toward the unforgiving depths. But she was moving forward. The cries of Emily and Jake surged around her, growing louder, more frantic. "Mom!" They beckoned, their need stirring her so deeply she felt her very soul ignite with fierce love. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted. A hollow rumble echoed through the void as if the darkness itself was cracking apart. Heart racing, she pushed forward, feet pounding against the ashy ground, breath struggling out of her lungs, but still she pressed on. She could see it. The thread of light was getting closer, more defined. In an instant, the darkness fractured, and she slipped through the rip, her frantic energy propelling her into a new expanse. But as she soared out into the openness, she barely had time to breathe. An overwhelming pair of eyes locked onto her, a figure emerging from the shadows, impossibly familiar, yet grotesquely distorted. "Karen, you thought you could escape that easily?" The voice, smooth as silk but edged with malice, sent icy fingers racing down her spine. It was someone she knew, someone she thought long gone. The shadows pulsed ceaselessly behind it, a writhing mass of despair fueled by her worst fears. The light flickered. The threat grew. Would she stand her ground, or would she fall prey to the darkness once and for all? The figure began to approach, and she could only wonder what had it become. What wait in this new realm of darkness? Answers loomed, just out of reach, calling to her with an insidious charm. Karen braced herself. The confrontation was here. But who or what had come for her in the dark? Karen's heart raced as she stood before the figure, an echo of someone she once loved twisted into a nightmare. The shadows writhed hungrily behind it, an abyss that seemed to threaten everything she had left. Fred? She gasped, the name tumbling from her lips like an unsteady prayer. The man she remembered stood there, his warm eyes now black in pools, skin cracked and pale, an abomination of the soul she once adored. Karen, he crooned, voice dripping with false sweetness. Why suffer in the light when you can be embraced by the dark? I'm here to offer you peace, if only you let me in. Get away from me! She screamed, taking a step back, the urgency of her children's cries flooding her thoughts. How could this be Fred yet not? The memories felt like shrapnel in her mind, beautiful yet painful. I wouldn't let you take my children. The figure drew closer, shadows wrapping around it like a dark cloak, each move wrapping tendrils of despair around her heart. This is not who I am, Karen. But this is all there is now. Join me, let the darkness fill you. Together, we can rule over the chaos. I want tea! She shouted, voice cracking under the strain of her resolve. You're not him. You're a lie built on my fears. The shadows lunged, snapping like ravenous beasts, but Karen felt a surge of defiance swelling within her. Her children were still out there. That thought ignited the fire of her spirit, turning the flickering lights she had followed into a beacon of hope. Taking a deep breath, she surged forward. Emily! Jake! She cried, pushing past the shadow that sought to seize her. She tore through the darkness, following the voices that echoed in her mind, familiar and filled with desperate love. But as she pushed further, her skin prickling under the weight of the shadows, the dark entity roared, You cannot hide from me. You will never see them again. No! She screamed, flinging herself into the void. A surge of light erupted from her core, unfurling in a brilliant wave that pushed the shadows back, boxing them in. The pain seared in her heart, but the image of her children, laughing and whole, gave her strength. With all her might she summoned every love she held close, pooling together her memories of joy amidst the chaos. I am not afraid. I will find them. With that thought she slashed through the mass of shadows with the force of a mother's fury. The shadows shrieked, wailing as they fell back. She glimpsed the altar in the distance, glimmering with promise. Behind it 2 small figures, bound by the darkness yet visible through the dim light surrounding the altar. Mom! Jake and Emily cried simultaneously, their innocent voices threading back to her heart. No! Fred's voice echoed, a venomous hiss that clawed through her resolve. Don't let them in. They will only bring you pain. No! Karen shot back, determination flowing through her veins. The shadows recoiled again as the light from her heart flared brighter, radiating hope. The only pain is living without them. With a fierce roar, she lunged for her children, casting away the remnants of fear that sought to keep her tethered to the darkness. As she reached them, the crashing wave of shadows converged around her, threatening to pull her back into oblivion. No! Together! She shouted, holding her children close, feeling their warmth against her lifeline, her unwavering anchor. In a blinding surge of light, the altar erupted, a brilliant explosion that bound the darkness and brought it to its knees. The shadows shrieked in agony, unraveling like smoke in the face of sunlight. There they stood, mother and children, the light cascading down, illuminating their faces. We made it! Emily squealed, her laughter like a balm to Karen's weary heart. Yes, my loves. We are free. Tears streamed down her face as she embraced them fiercely, vowing to protect their brightness with every breath. As the last echoes of darkness faded, Karen held her children, feeling a peaceful calm wash over her. They were safe. The threatening shadows had dissolved back into whispers, and the remnants of dread that had long haunted Westfield finally receded into silence. Looking out across the clearing, the sky broke open. Stars twinkled like promises, filling the air with a comforting glow. "Let us go home," Karen whispered, clutching their hands as they started toward the light, walking away from the remnants of a battle that had nearly cost everything. Home, where laughter awaited, and shadows no longer loomed. They stepped forward, carrying the strength of survival, love, and the promise of brighter days ahead together. As they emerged into the light, the weight of the darkness lifted, and with it, Karen found closure, knowing that they could always fight the shadows, as long as they held on to each other. If you felt the weight of this journey, now is the time to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you never miss the next gripping story. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm that helps these stories reach more people like you. Flood the comments section below with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about what just happened. And wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.